The late afternoon sun stretched long golden blades across Maple Street, turning every crack in the pavement into a glowing river. Sprinklers hissed somewhere behind manicured hedges, and a television murmured inside an open window. The neighborhood was warm, soft, safe, until the moment it wasn't. Emma Shaw lay motionless on the sidewalk. Her pink bicycle lay twisted beside her, one wheel still spinning, the white streamers fluttering in confused, slow arc. Hoppers, the stuffed rabbit she carried everywhere, had been thrown from the basket, and now lay on his side, with one ear bent beneath him. Dust glimmered in the golden light around her, but nothing else moved. Eli skidded to his knees beside her. The impact scraped his skin, but he barely felt it. His breath came hard, sharp, cutting into his chest. The air tasted like hot concrete and cut grass, the smell mixing with something metallic he couldn't quite place. Maybe the blood starting to bead on Emma's scraped cheek. He leaned close, lowering his ear to her mouth. No breath, no movement, no rise in her chest. The world seemed to compress into a tight, suffocating silence. His hands trembled above her small frame. He recognized this moment, the frozen helplessness, the disbelief, the awful stillness. He had seen it once before on a kitchen floor, surrounded by spilled eggs and sirens. Not again. Eli tilted Emma's head back the way he had practiced on the rubber dummy at the shelter. Her curls brushed his wrist, soft, warm from the sun. He pinched her nose gently and breathed into her mouth. Her chest rose slightly, then fell again. He set his palms over her sternum. 28, 29. His voice barely existed, more breath than sound. He pressed hard, letting his thin arms fall straight, letting gravity help him. Her chest compressed beneath his hands. Far too easily, she felt fragile, like something that might break if he pushed wrong. But he kept going. Chun had said not to worry about rib. Blood to the brain mattered more. Seconds mattered more. He counted silently after that, teeth clenched, yaw shaking. Heat built under his palms, sweat slicking the backs of his hands. The sun flashed off the chrome of the fallen bicycle. Somewhere, a dog barked, then went quiet. And then came the sound of glass breaking, a jar hitting pavement, liquid splashing. The unmistakable clatter of groceries spilling across a driveway. Eli didn't look. He knew what had caused it. He could feel the thunder of footsteps before he heard them clearly. Heavy boots pounding the asphalt, coming fast, gaining speed, shaking the quiet street. The kind of running that came from panic and rage combined into something dangerous. He kept pressing. 13, 14. The footsteps drew closer. A shadow stretched across him, blocking the soft evening light. He heard the sharp intake of breath from a man who had just discovered the worst moment of his life. Get away from her. The shout crashed through the quiet like a slammed door. Eli flinched, his shoulders jerking at the sound, but his hands didn't leave Emma's chest. He knew he didn't have time, not to run, not to explain, not to survive whatever came next. All he had was the rhythm. 17, 18. A grocery bag hit the pavement behind him. Something rolled. Maybe a can, maybe a bottle. The man's boots hammered closer, faster. Eli saw the reflection of the leather vest before he saw the man's face. A patch glinted. Hell's Angels. The kind of patch that meant power in this neighborhood. The kind of patch that meant danger. The man reached them. Huge. Broad-shouldered. Chest heaving. His tattoos tensed with each breath, and his eyes were wild, locked onto Emma's limp body and the small stranger kneeling over her. He lunged. A fist grabbed Eli's collar and jerked him upward off balance. His shirt bit into his neck. His knees scraped the pavement as he lost his grounding. For a split second, his hands left Emma's sternum. The sound fell out of him, barely audible. He threw one last compression as he was dragged backward, and that was when Emma inhaled. It wasn't loud, not dramatic, just a small, vet rasp, the kind of involuntary breath the body takes when it's coming back from a silent place. Her ribs lifted, skin pulling tight over her small chest. The man froze. His grip loosened on Eli's collar. The boy fell back to the ground, hands braced, eyes wide, chest burning. For a moment, neither of them moved. The only sound was Emma's shaky, uneven breaths trying to find a rhythm again. Emma. The man's voice cracked. It was suddenly nothing like the roar from seconds earlier. Something broke inside it. Fear, grief, love tangled into one trembling sound. He dropped to his knees so quickly the pavement should have hurt, but he didn't notice. His hands hovered over his daughter, shaking as he touched her cheek, brushed curls from her forehead, whispered her name again. Her eyelids fluttered. She blinked up at the sky, then at him, confused. Daddy. The word was small, hoarse. Eli stared, chest still heaving. His arms shook, sweat stung his eyes. He didn't dare move, afraid she might stop breathing again if he blinked wrong. The man looked at his daughter's face, color returning, life returning, then turned toward the boy he had nearly thrown across the street. Their eyes met. Eli expected rage, retaliation, mistake or not. He thought the man would swing anyway. Instead, Marcus Shaw stared at him with something raw and unguarded. Shock, relief, disbelief. You, he swallowed hard, breath-breaking. You saved her. Eli looked away, grounding his hands on the warm pavement. He wasn't used to being seen, not even like this. For a moment, the sunlight, the spinning bicycle wheel, the drifting dust, the father's trembling hands, all of it held perfectly still, and in that fragile silence, for the first time since his mother collapsed 2 years ago, Eli realized he hadn't been helpless. Not this time. He had brought someone back, and the world finally paused long enough to witness him. Marcus's voice broke into a mess of thank yous and half sobs, his hands trembling as he clutched Emma close. Neighbors stepped out of their porches. Someone shouted to call an ambulance. Everyone's eyes fixed on the father and daughter, reunited on the glowing sidewalk. No one looked at the boy. Eli watched Emma breathing, small, steady, real. He let that sight brand itself into his memory, like proof that he could still make something right in the world. The golden light flickered on her curls, and for a moment it was enough. Then he stood. Dust clung to his knees. His palms still tingled from compressions. The smell of vinegar from the broken pickle jar drifted on the air as he backed away from the scene. Nobody turned. It was the perfect moment to disappear. Eli slipped between 2 parked cars, crossed the edge of the road, and faded into the shadow of the alley he knew so well. He moved without noise, without hesitation, like someone used to leaving before anyone could decide what to do with him. By the time the ambulance turned onto Maple Street, the boy who saved Emma Shaw had evaporated, just like always. 2 years earlier, the kitchen smelled like eggs and dish soap and the cheap lavender candles his mother loved. Sunlight fell through the thin curtains, striping the floor in warm, uneven lines. Sarah Martinez laughed as she flipped an omelet, shoulders swaying to the music playing softly from her phone. She wore the apron with the faded sunflowers, the one Eli had spilled paint on, and apologized for 100 times. She never minded. "You're growing too fast," she teased, brushing his hair back. "Slow down for me." "Okay." The spatula clattered. She didn't. Eli remembered the sound more than anything, the hollow slap of metal hitting linoleum. When he looked up, the omelet half folded, steam rising gently from the pan. His mother was already falling, her knees buckled inward. Her elbows struck the stove as she crumpled. Her face hit the floor with a dull, sickening sound that echoed through the small apartment. "Mom." She didn't move. The world seemed to tilt. Eli scrambled toward her, sliding through spilled eggs and broken shells. Her eyes were open but unfocused, pupils blown wide. Her chest barely rose. His hands shook so badly, he dropped the phone the first time he grabbed it. He punched 911 with fingers that couldn't steady. Please, please, my mom. She's not. He couldn't finish. The dispatcher's voice blurred. Instructions washed over him in pieces. He knelt in the mess, his breath hitching, begging her to wake up. There was nothing he could do. He stayed holding her hand until the sirens arrived. Red lights, washing over yellow linoleum, over lavender candles, over the woman who had always been his whole world. The paramedics moved fast, voices clipped and urgent. They worked over her with tools he didn't understand. Someone tried to pull him away. He refused until a paramedic crouched down and whispered something gentle and awful at the same time. They took her. She never came home. The foster house smelled like bleach and sadness. Eli sat on a bed too big for him, staring at a pile of clothes someone else had folded. He could hear shouting downstairs, angry shouting, the kind that made his stomach twist. Doors slammed, something broke. He clutched the photo of his mother, still flecked with dried yolk from that morning. His fingertips pressed over her face until they numbed. Weeks passed that way, moving from one house to another, each one colder than the last. Adults talked about him like he wasn't standing right there. Some were kind, but distant. Some weren't kind at all. He learned quickly. Quiet kids stayed safe. Invisible kids stayed safest. When another foster father yelled at him for breathing too loudly, Eli stopped asking for anything, stopped opening drawers, stopped existing any more than necessary. He ran the first time a door slammed too close to his ear. He didn't look back. The shelter on 5th Street was warm and smelled faintly of wet jackets and soup. It was crowded, loud, chaotic. Yet somehow, the first place in months where no one barked orders at him, a volunteer announced a CPR class, waving a stack of papers. Most people groaned and kept eating. Eli followed the group into a small room with folding chairs. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A rubber training dummy lay on the table, its plastic chest smooth and hollow. When Ms. Chun began explaining compressions, Eli leaned forward in his chair, his eyes locked on her hand. She showed where to place the heel of the palm, how to push hard enough to move blood even if ribs cracked. Most people freeze, she said softly. You won't. He wanted to believe her. When it was his turn, he pressed on the dummy until his arms ached. He was small, but he kept going, adjusting the depth, listening as the dummy clicked. Good, she murmured, guiding his fingers. You're not scared to try. He signed the sheet afterward, his handwriting shaky, letters uneven. A timestamp printed next to his name, something about seeing the time in black ink steadied him. It felt like a promise to himself. Later that night, he lay awake on a cot near the wall, the room filled with snores and shifting feet. He stared at the ceiling, breathing in the mixed smells of detergent and winter air. He whispered something into the dark, not a prayer, not quite, but a vow he stitched into his bone. Never again, never helpless, never frozen, never too late. Back in the present, Eli walked deeper into the alley, the warm glow of Maple Street fading behind him. His hands still felt the shape of Emma's small chest under his palms. His breath still trembled. No applause followed him. No one called out. No one even saw him leave. He preferred it that way. Being invisible kept him alive. But tonight, for 60 seconds, it had saved someone else too. And somewhere in the city, tucked in a metal cabinet at a shelter, a piece of paper stamped 1907 waited for the day someone would finally realize what that meant. The vow settled in Eli's chest like a quiet burn. Steady, permanent. something that would never let him stand still when someone needed help. The alley around him darkened as a cloud drifted over the sun, and he blinked up at the narrow slice of sky. Feet shuffled past the alley mouth. A dog barked. The hum of Maple Street returned, soft and unbothered. He wiped his palms on his pants and stepped out of the shadows. The world came back into focus. The evening sun poured over Maple Street in sheets of honeyed light, so thick and warm it made even the cracked edges of the sidewalk look gentle. A faint breeze carried the scent of mowed grass and warm asphalt, the kind of air that made people linger on porches and neighbors wave longer than necessary. Eli kept to the shade of the alley, the border between visibility and safety. His shoulder brushed the cool brick as he watched the street through a gap between two trash bins. There she was. Emma pedaled her pink bicycle with the confidence of someone who had never had a reason to fear anything. Her curls bounced with each rotation of the wheel, catching the sunlight in glints of copper. The white handlebar streamers twisted behind her like little trails of wind. She rang her bell when she passed Mrs. Chin's storefront, even though the shop door was closed and the windows were dark. Ritual, habit, joy. Eli felt something unfamiliar tug at the corner of his mouth. She always looked bright, like the world made space for her, like she belonged to it effortlessly. But today, something felt off. Not wrong yet, just off. It started small, a hesitation in her rhythm, a shift so subtle most eyes would miss it. But Eli had learned to read the micro movements of people around him, every flinch, every sharp breath, every twitch that meant danger. He saw Emma's fingers tighten on the handlebar, not like a kid enjoying the wind, like someone bracing. 43 seconds. A flicker crossed her face. A shadow. A vince. Something fleeting and soft, but unmistakably wrong. Her smile slipped. She shook her head once, quick, confused, like trying to shake something loose. The bike drifted an inch to the left. Eli leaned forward instinctively, his hand lifting slightly, as if he could catch her from across the street. 39 seconds. Emma straightened the bike and kept pedaling, but her shoulders tightened, her breathing changed. The sunlight felt harsher suddenly, as if it were spotlighting the tiniest details, the white of her knuckles, the quiver of her bottom lip, the uneven way. Her curls bounced now. She passed the Morrisons' house. Their tabby cat watched from the windowsill. Emma didn't wave. 34 seconds. Eli stepped 1 foot out of the alley, then stopped. He wasn't sure yet. He didn't want to frighten her, didn't want to step into a moment that wasn't his. But her right hand slipped off the handlebar, just dropped, like her fingers forgot how to hold on. 30 seconds. The bicycle wobbled. Hard. Emma pressed her hand to her chest, palm flat, fingertips trembling. Her eyes widened, not scared yet, just confused. Her feet faltered on the pedals. Something was wrong inside her. Something she couldn't see, couldn't name. Eli felt it like a shock through his ribs. He'd seen this. Not the exact movement, not the bike, not the sun-drenched sidewalk, but the slackening, the collapse beginning at the edges. He'd seen it on his kitchen floor. 27 seconds. Her other hand rose to her chest, both small palms pressed tight, as if trying to hold something together. The bicycle veered again, tires scraping against the concrete with a sharp hiss. 23 seconds. Come on, Eli whispered. Though she couldn't hear him, his voice cracked anyway. She tried to pedal, legs trembling, knees wobbly. The bike lurched forward in a slow, weak spasm. Her breathing hitched. Eli stepped fully out of the alley. 19 seconds. Emma blinked at the world like it was slipping away from her, like she was falling asleep even as she tried to stay awake. Her chest rose too fast. Then not at all. Her foot slipped off the pedal entirely. The bicycle jerked sideways. 14 seconds. The air felt wrong, too still, too bright. A summer's day shouldn't hold quiet like this. It shouldn't carry dread. Something invisible passed across Emma's face. Panic. Maybe, or surrender, or simply the absence of strength. She tilted. 11 seconds. Her body tipped to the left in a slow, almost graceful arc, like a puppet whose strings had gone slack. Her curls fluttered. The bell on her handlebar chimed once, a final soft warble. Then gravity took her. 9 seconds. Her small body hit the pavement with a dull, heavy thud. Not sharp, not loud, just final. The bicycle skidded beside her, metals scraping concrete. The front wheel spun violently at first, then slower, then slower. 7 seconds. Hoppers launched from the basket and rolled across the sidewalk, ending face down as if hiding his stitched eyes from what happened. 4 seconds. Emma did not move. The golden light around her suddenly felt cruel. Beautiful and cruel. The kind of light that promised safety but delivered none. 1 second. Eli ran. He didn't decide to. His feet slammed the sidewalk before his mind formed the thought. His breath tore in and out. His heart jackhammered against his ribs. The world blurred, but Emma remained perfectly clear. A small, motionless shape on the sunlit pavement. He reached her in 5 strides, dropped to his knees in 6. Her eyes were closed, her arm folded under her, her cheek scraped raw, her chest still. No rise, no fall. Everything inside him recoiled in terror, but his hands moved on instinct, steady, trained, unstoppable. The vow lit up inside him again, fierce and cold. Not again, not this one, not today. He leaned over her, checking for breath, already knowing the answer, and with the sun glaring on their small corner of Maple Street, Eli pressed his hands to her chest and began the count. 30 compressions. Life or death. Seconds or nothing. The first compression landed beneath Eli's palms with a soft, frightening give. The second came sharper, his elbows locking, shoulders trembling. The world narrowed to the tiny rise and fall he was trying to force back into Emma's chest. He whispered the count under his breath, each word scraping out of him like a plea, and then he heard it. Boots. Heavy, fast, vicious, crushing broken glass, grinding it into the pavement. Each footstep sharper than the last, each one carrying the rage of a man who believes he is arriving too late. The sound hit him like heat on the back of his neck. Eli didn't turn. He pressed again and again, harder now, the way the volunteer had shown him, the way he had practiced until his thin arms burned. His breath came fast through clenched teeth. Sweat fell from his chin onto Emma's shirt, darkening the cotton like raindrops on paper. Behind him, the boots thundered closer, fueled by a single word that ripped across the golden street. Stop. Marcus's voice cracked the air like a whip. Eli's shoulders jerked at the sound, but his hands stayed where they were. He braced for the impact he knew was coming. He had lived long enough to recognize the shape of an approaching blow. The boots hit the pavement beside him with a final bone-shaking stomp. A shadow swallowed the sunlight over his small frame. A hand, big, rough, calloused, grabbed the back of his jacket and yanked him upward so hard the breath tore from his lungs. His chest strained against the too-tight fabric. His feet scraped off the ground. Marcus roared again, each word shaking with panic. "What are you doing to my daughter?" The man's face was flushed with fury, jaw clenched tight, eyes glassy with terror. Tattoos flexed across his arms as he hauled Eli closer, close enough that Eli could smell the gasoline, the leather, the raw fear. Eli's own feet dangled for a moment, but even then, even with danger curled around him like a fist, his hand reached out in reflex, landing one last firm compression against Emma's chest before Marcus pulled him too far away to touch her. That final push broke something in the air. A small sound rose from the sidewalk, so faint at first he thought he imagined it. Then it came again. A vet. Shaky, inhale. Weak, but alive. A tiny, desperate gasp. Emma's chest lifted on its own. Marcus froze. All the fury in his grip stuttered and softened. His hands slackened at Eli's collar. His breath faltered. His expression cracked open. Confusion and hope flooding through the shards of his rage. Eli hit the pavement as Marcus released him, but he didn't care. He scrambled forward on hands and knees, eyes locked on Emma's chest as it rose again. This time without his help. Her fingers twitched. Her lashes fluttered. The golden light shimmered across her small, scraped face. Marcus fell to his knees with a sound that wasn't a word, wasn't a cry, just something broken and grateful and terrified all at once. His hands hovered inches above his daughter, afraid to touch, afraid to break the fragile miracle unfolding in front of him. "Emma," he whispered, "baby, look at me, please look at me." Her eyes opened slowly, unsteady, confused. They focused on the blur of her father's face leaning over her. "Daddy," her voice rasped like sandpaper dragged across stone. "Did I fall?" Marcus laughed. Then an ugly, gasping sound. Half sob, half prayer. Tears spilled down his cheeks. Streaking through dust and sweat, he cupped her face gently, his fingertips trembling so hard they shook strands of her curls. "You're okay," he choked out. "You're okay now." Over his shoulder, Eli watched, chest heaving, arms trembling, dust sticking to the sweat on his skin. Relief spread through him like warmth after a long freeze. He had done it. He had pulled someone back from the quiet place. He had not been helpless. Emma was alive. But then Marcus turned, their eyes met, and Eli saw it. The realization settling into Marcus's expression like a storm passing. The recognition of what the boy had done, the understanding of how close they had come to losing everything. Shock gave way to something Eli had never seen directed at him before. Gratitude so fierce it almost hurt to look at. "You..." Marcus swallowed hard. "You saved her." The words hit Eli like a physical force. He couldn't hold them, couldn't absorb them, couldn't even meet the man's gaze. He backed up on the pavement, palms scraping against grit and tiny shards of glass. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, not from fear anymore, but from something too big and unfamiliar to name. Marcus reached a hand toward him, a gesture meant to steady, not harm. Eli flinched anyway. Old instincts snapped back like a rubber band. He pushed himself to his feet so fast he nearly tipped over. The world around him pulsed with noise. Neighbors shouting for help, a distant siren growing louder, people emerging from doorways to see what had happened. Too many eyes, too many voices. He wasn't built for this kind of attention. He wasn't built for being seen. The siren wailed closer. Marcus called out, voice thick, "Kid, wait." Eli didn't. He slipped back from the curb, past the fallen bicycle, past the spinning wheel that was slowing to a stop. His mismatched shoes scuffed against the pavement as he ducked behind the nearest parked car. The shadows welcomed him. He moved fast, weaving between hedges and fences, feeling the street fade behind him with each step. By the time the ambulance reached the Shaw house, lights flashing across porches and rooftops, the boy who saved Emma was already gone. Just like a ghost, just like someone built to vanish the moment his job was done, and like always, no one followed. For a long moment after Emma was lifted into the ambulance, the sidewalk glowed empty and quiet. Only a faint shimmer of disturbed dust remained where Eli had knelt. Marcus crouched beside the fallen bicycle, still shaking, his breath uneven. His fingers brushed the pavement and touched something soft. A sliver of laminated paper lay half hidden beneath the bike's front wheel. A tiny bookmark, worn at the edges from being turned in too many library books. On the front, a picture of a woman smiling at the camera, sunlight catching the curve of her cheek. On the back, written in a child's crooked handwriting, "For Illy, love, Mom." Marcus swallowed hard. This wasn't just something dropped. This was something carried, something treasured. Proof the boy had been real, not an angel passing through on borrowed feet. He closed his fist around it. He would find him. 2 days turned into a quiet storm. Marcus began at dawn, walking the length of Maple Street, then the blocks beyond. His boots carried him into alleys, behind dumpsters, into parking lots and strip malls, through doorways where people hesitated to let a leather vest cross the threshold. He showed the bookmark to anyone who didn't turn away too fast. Have you seen a kid? Small, skinny, dark eyes, clothes too big. Some shook their heads. Some looked away. Some pretended not to hear. At Mrs. Chin's store, the bell above the door jingled nervously when he entered. Mrs. Chin pressed her lips together, eyes flicking to his patch. He placed the bookmark on the counter gently. "He saved my daughter," he said. Her expression softened, but not enough to speak. Not yet. Late on the second afternoon, someone at the community center finally murmured a clue. Some of the street kids go to the library when it's hot. So Marcus went. When he stepped through the sliding glass doors, the air changed instantly. The library smelled of old pages and printing ink, an oasis of quiet. A few children sat at tables, coloring or reading. A librarian looked up, startled, eyes darting to his boots, his vest, his tattoos. Marcus held his hands up quietly. "I'm not here to make trouble." He didn't need to say more. He felt the gaze before he saw the boy. In the far corner, near the back shelves, Eli sat curled in a chair that swallowed his small frame. His backpack was tucked against his ribs. His shoulders were tight. His eyes were wide, frightened but ready to bolt. Marcus exhaled once, slowly. He didn't move closer. Instead, he slid down the end of a nearby bookshelf and sat on the floor, cross-legged, letting the leather of his vest creak softly. His palms rested on his knees. Open, empty. The librarian stiffened. Children stared. A man like Marcus didn't sit on library floors, but he stayed. After a moment, he reached into a paper bag he'd carried since morning and set something between them on the carpet. A sandwich wrapped in wax paper, a bag of chips, a bottle of water, and an apple. He didn't push it toward Eli, didn't speak. He just opened a random book and pretended to read. The library clock ticked, pages fluttered, someone coughed. Minutes passed like slow-moving sunlight. Eli's breathing was fast at first. His fingers curled around the backpack strap, but he watched the man, watched the space that stayed respectfully between them, watched the food that wasn't offered with strings attached. His hunger betrayed him first. His gaze flicked to the sandwich, then to the apple, then back to Marcus. Finally, his voice broke the hush, almost inaudible. Is she okay?" Marcus looked up. The question hit him harder than any alley fight ever had. "She's perfect," he said softly. "Because of you." Eli swallowed, eyes lowering. Shame, relief, confusion. It all twisted together. Another minute passed before he reached for the water bottle. He opened it with trembling hand, took a sip, then another. No one spoke after that. They didn't need to. The next morning, the neighborhood woke to a thunder that didn't belong to the weather. Motorcycles, many of them, rolled down Maple Street in a slow, deliberate procession. Engine growls layered together, vibrating windows. Heads turned, curtains lifted. Parents pulled children inside. 23 bikes, 23 riders, leather and chrome catching the sun like steel feathers. and Marcus walked ahead of them all. Eli stood near the alley entrance where he always lingered, watching the world without entering it. When he heard the rumble, he froze. His hands gripped the straps of his too large backpack. His heart hammered in a familiar rhythm of fear. The convoy stopped. Engines died. Silence, heavy and expectant, fell over the street. Marcus stepped forward alone. He carried a small package wrapped in brown paper. Eli took a step backward on instinct. "It's okay," Marcus said, voice low, gentle. "You're not in trouble." He knelt, not too close, not too fast, and held out the bundle. "Open it," he said. Eli hesitated, then took the package with careful fingers. The paper crinkled softly as he peeled it back. Inside was a vest, black leather, soft, child-sized, no patches yet, clean stitching along the edges, the scent of newness rising from it like warm smoke. He stared at it, stunned. "You saved one of ours," Marcus said. "That makes you one of ours." Behind him, 23 men sat silent on their bikes, their vests bearing the weight of their brotherhood. Their presence wasn't a threat, it was a salute. Eli's throat tightened. He brushed his thumb along the leather. It didn't feel like a costume or a gift. It felt like a promise, a belonging he had never been offered before. He looked up at Marcus. Why me?" Marcus reached into his pocket and placed something in Eli's hand. The bookmark, the crease down the middle, the faded ink, the woman's warm smile. "You dropped this," Marcus said softly, "and I figured anyone who carries something this precious deserves to be found." Eli held the bookmark against his chest. For a moment, the world blurred. Then he slipped the vest onto his shoulders. It fit like it had been waiting for him. From the line of bikes, a man revved his engine in a low, approving growl. Another followed, then another. Soon the whole street vibrated with the subdued thunder of welcome. For the first time in a long time, Eli didn't feel invisible. He felt seen, have felt chosen, have felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in years, Eli stood in a space that belonged to him. The room above the dry cleaners wasn't much. One narrow window, AuraStories-s, a small kitchenette, with a faucet that groaned when turned, but it was clean, warm, and quiet. The scent of steamed clothes drifted up through the floorboards, mixing with the faint lemon cleanser someone from the chapter had used to scrub the place before he arrived. A bed sat against the wall, not a cot, not a folded blanket on cardboard, a real bed. Next to it, a desk with a single lamp, a small dresser with 2 drawers, a chair that didn't wobble. On the pillow lay a piece of paper in Marcus's blocky handwriting. "We'll help you fill it. Welcome home. Your brothers." Eli touched the corner of the note and felt the warmth of something he didn't have a name for yet. Belonging, maybe, or the beginning of it. Behind him, Marcus leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, pretending not to watch too closely. "If the radiator acts up, hit it on the left side," he said. "Pipe sticks sometime." Eli nodded. His hand brushed against the leather vest he wore. Lighter now, familiar. The soft rumble of motorcycles echoed from the street below. Once, that sound meant danger. Now, it meant he wasn't alone anymore. But in the eyes of the law, that sound meant something else entirely. Something problematic. Something dangerous. And trouble was already walking toward him. The knock came 3 mornings later. Sharp, official. The kind of knock that made Eli's stomach fold in on itself. He opened the door a few inches. A woman stood there, clipboard in hand, ID lanyard around her neck, hair pulled into a tight twist that matched the rigid set of her jaw. Her perfume smelled like artificial lavender, too clean, too sharp for the narrow hallway. "Are you Eli Martinez?" she asked. Eli's grip tightened on the doorframe. "Yes, I'm Jennifer Kowalski, Child Protective Services." Her tone wasn't unkind, but it was unmovable. "I need to speak with you about your living situation." She stepped inside before he could answer, eyes scanning faster than seemed possible. The bed, the dresser, the desk, the leather vest hanging on the chair, the name Shaw on the lease paper taped to the fridge. Her pen clicked once. "Is Mr. Shaw your legal guardian?" Eli swallowed. "Not yet." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "And you're living here alone?" He nodded. The air felt colder suddenly, pressing against his skin. Jennifer walked to the desk. Her fingers skimmed the leather vest, the child-sized cut of it, the fresh stitching. Her brow pinched. "This belongs to you?" she asked. He hesitated. "Yes." She didn't say anything, but her expression filled the silence with judgments she didn't have to voice. Marcus arrived moments later, coming up the stairs with 2 bags of groceries. The moment he saw Jennifer standing in the middle of the room, his shoulders tensed. He set the bags down, wiping his palms on his jeans. "Who are you?" Marcus asked. "Child Protective Services." She repeated, "We received an anonymous report about a minor living alone in a unit leased under your name." Marcus's jaw worked, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm trying to help him. Give him a safe place." Jennifer's pen scribbled faster. Her clipboard rustled with papers that sounded like decisions already made. "You are affiliated with a motorcycle club known for criminal activity," she said. "This environment is not appropriate for a child." Marcus stepped forward, face flushing. That environment saved his life. She didn't flinch. "Not legally relevant." Eli's breath caught. Jennifer continued, methodical and cold, as if she were reading from a rule book sealed in stone. "A minor cannot live unsupervised under the guardianship of a non-relative with a criminal record. I'm filing for emergency foster placement." The words dropped like metal. "Foster placement," Marcus repeated, voice cracking. "You don't understand. The system didn't protect him. It failed him. Procedures are in place for his safety." Jennifer said, "He's safer here than anywhere else." Marcus snapped, "Ask anyone. That's not for you to determine." Eli stepped back until his spine pressed into the wall. His pulse hammered. The room shrank, folding in on him. Memories rushed up, the slamming doors, the shouting, the cold beds in homes he never belonged to, the trash bags he was given to move his things. Jennifer reached into her bag and pulled out a black garbage sack. The sight of it broke something in Eli's chest. Marcus said sharply, "He's not going anywhere." Jennifer didn't raise her voice. That made it worse. "Shaw, if you obstruct this process, I will call law enforcement." Marcus's hands curled into fists, knuckles whitening, but he didn't move, didn't touch her. "Eli," Jennifer said, turning to him with a rehearsed softness, "you need to gather your things." Eli stared at the garbage bag, at the bed he had slept in for the first time without fear, at the note on the pillow, at the leather vest hanging from the chair, his first symbol of being wanted, not tolerated. He felt the world tilting again. This time not because someone was dying, but because someone was trying to take away the first place he'd ever felt alive. He shook his head, small, terrified, but firm. Jennifer sighed, as if she expected that answer. "I'm sorry, you don't get to choose." Marcus stepped between them. "I'm filing for guardianship. Today, temporary guardianship requires an investigation. That takes time," Jennifer said. "Until then, he goes with us." Marcus' voice lowered, raw and desperate. "The last time he was in foster care, he ran away. You'll lose him again." Jennifer's expression didn't change. "Procedures are procedures." Eli clutched the bookmark in his pocket. His mother's smile pressed against his fingertips. Panic burned behind his ribs. His hands trembled. He didn't want another garbage bag, another strange house, another cold bed, another door slammed in his face. But the decision wasn't his. Somewhere downstairs, the door to the dry cleaners chimed as customers came and went. Life outside continued. Oblivious, inside the small room, Jennifer's pen hovered over the page. She checked the box, and the system moved forward. The black garbage bag skidded across the floorboards as Marcus kicked it hard, sending it slamming into the far wall. The sound cracked through the studio apartment like a warning shot. Jennifer Kowalski blinked, startled. Marcus didn't shout. His voice dropped instead, low enough to carry weight without heat. "He's not packing anything into that," he said. "Not now, not ever." He stepped between Eli and the garbage bag like a shield. Then he turned to Jennifer, jaw tight but controlled. "You want procedure? Fine. We'll do this by the book. Today, in front of a judge," and just like that, the battlefield changed. Family Court smelled like old coffee and furniture polish. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed faintly, swallowing the natural morning warmth that seeped through the hallway windows. Eli sat beside Marcus at the front table, shoulders stiff under the too big dress shirt Emma had picked out for him. The collar rubbed his neck. The floor felt too far away under his feet. He kept one hand in his pocket, holding the bookmark. His mother's smile pressed against his palm like a small, steady heartbeat. Behind them, the gallery filled one leather vest at a time. 23 bikers. 23 silent giants in rows of polished boots and folded arms. Their presence was a wall, protective, immovable, but never threatening. Not here. Not in a courtroom where one wrong move could destroy everything. The bailiff cleared his throat. "All rise." Judge Hartman stepped in. Her uniform black robe swayed lightly with each step. She had the steady look of someone who'd seen every kind of trouble a family could make, endure, or overcome. A sternness earned from decades of disappointment, tempered by a glint of compassion she tried not to show. She glanced around the room, her eyes pausing briefly on the line of bikers. "I see we have an audience," she murmured. The courtroom exhaled in one uneasy breath. The judge seated herself. Papers shuffled. The hearing began. Jennifer presented her case with clinical precision. No malice, only procedure. She spoke of risk, inappropriate placement, criminal affiliation, and lack of legal guardianship. Her pen tapped the folder each time she emphasized a point. Eli felt each tap like a nail hammered deeper into something fragile inside him. Marcus kept his hands folded, knuckled pale. He didn't interrupt, didn't snap, didn't rise from his seat. His restraint was ironclad. When his turn came, he addressed the judge with a steadiness that hid how close he was to breaking. "I'm asking to take responsibility for him," he said. "Legally. Permanently. On what grounds?" the county attorney asked. "On the grounds that he has no one else," Marcus replied, voice rough. "And on the grounds that he saved my child's life." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Judge Hartman raised her hand for silence. "Evidence. Not emotions. We're here to determine placement." Evidence. They had that. The first witness was Ms. Chun from the shelter. Her scrubs were slightly wrinkled, her hair tied in a messy bun she kept adjusting. Her hands trembled only occasionally as she described the CPR class. "Most adults don't even stay for the whole lesson," she said. "He stayed late, asked questions, practiced until he got it right." Marcus's lawyer clicked the remote. A screen lit up behind the judge. The image, a sign-in sheet, time-stamped in faded ink. His name, his handwriting, the hour that mattered. Judge Hartman leaned forward. Her expression didn't soften, but something changed behind her eyes. The second witness was the emergency room doctor. He wore a crisp shirt beneath his white coat and smelled faintly of antiseptic. "Without bystander, CPR delivered immediately," he said. "Her chance of survival was near zero." He turned toward Eli. You bought her those minutes, he said quietly. You kept her alive long enough for us to finish the job. The courtroom went silent. The third witness was the library coordinator, who spoke gently about a boy who read quietly, returned books, and never caused trouble. Always polite, she said, always trying to learn. The judge wrote something down. Then came the last witness. Small feet approached the bench. A yellow dress swayed, hair twisted into pigtails. Emma. She clutched a folded paper she had carried like a secret weapon. Her shoes squeaked on the linoleum as she stood on tiptoe to hand the drawing to the judge. Judge Hartman unfolded it slowly. A girl on a pink bicycle, a boy in oversized clothes, drawn with softer lines, a pair of faint wings sketched behind him in crayon, and above them, written in uneven letters, "He saved me. Don't take him away." Judge Hartman held the drawing still for a long time. The courtroom breathed as one. She turned to Emma. "Sweetheart, you understand what this hearing is about." Emma nodded, her chin wobbling. "He's my hero," she whispered, "and my daddy's brother. You can't take brothers away." One of the bikers in the back wiped a hand over his eyes quickly, pretending it was dust. Marcus swallowed hard and looked at the judge. Not pleading, not intimidating, just waiting. Judge Hartman closed the drawing gently, placing it atop her notes like a final piece of evidence on a sacred altar. She scanned the room. The leather vests, the trembling boy, the rigid caseworker, the father holding himself together with brute force and love. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but edged with something unmistakably human. "This court does not ignore the law," she said, "nor does it ignore the truth." Eli held his breath. "Young man," she said, turning to him, "do you want to live with Mr. Shaw?" Eli's voice barely rose above a whisper. "Yes." The judge nodded slowly. "Then this court will not stand in the way of a family forming where one is desperately needed." She lifted her pen. The entire room leaned forward. "Temporary guardianship granted to Marcus Shaw," she declared, "pending full adoption review. CPS will monitor the placement. We reconvene in 6 months." The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Eli exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. Behind him, 23 bikers stood, not cheering, not clapping, just rising silently in solidarity, their vests rustling like wings. Marcus placed a hand on Eli's shoulder, steady and warm. "Let's go home," he said, and for once, the word didn't feel like a place other people had. It felt like somewhere Eli belonged. The gavel's echo was still fading when Judge Hartman lifted the folder before her. A thick, uneven stack of reports, photocopies, timestamps, and witness statements. The courtroom held its breath as she opened it like a surgeon preparing for a delicate procedure. "Before we conclude," she said, eyes scanning the room, "we need the evidence properly entered into the record." The bailiff dimmed the lights. A screen flickered awake behind the bench, humming quietly. Paper rustled like soft thunder as the judge reached for the first document. Eli sat rigid beside Marcus, one hand gripping the edge of the table, the other clutching the bookmark in his pocket. The leather vest on his shoulders felt heavier here, like it carried more responsibility than comfort, but also more truth than fear. Judge Hartman cleared her throat. "Let us begin with the community training documentation." A slide illuminated the screen, a scanned sign-in sheet from the 5th Street Shelter CPR course. The timestamp glowed faintly in the corner, grainy but unmistakable, 7:07 in the evening. His name, written in uneven, careful letters directly beneath it. Eli inhaled sharply. He remembered the marker in his hand, the tremble in his wrist, the way the volunteer had steadied the clipboard for him. The judge wasn't just seeing proof he'd attended the training. She was seeing intent, choice, preparation, chain of custody verified. The judge murmured, signing the bottom of the printed page with a firm stroke. Document. Admitted. The screen shifted. The second slide displayed the emergency department report, the one written mere hours after Emma was revived. The hospital's logo hovered in the corner like an official seal, sterile and bold. The doctor's handwriting, tight and clinical, filled the page. Child's survival dependent on immediate bystander CPR administered prior to EMS arrival. The judge tapped her pen on that line. This statement alone carries significant weight. Next came the ECG strip from Emma's initial evaluation, peaks and valleys of a heart once on the edge. Then the oxygen saturation readings rising steadily after she was stabilized. Each display clicked into place, with the precision of puzzle pieces falling together. Jennifer shifted in her seat, posture stiffening. She wasn't losing. She was being overruled by the truth on the page. Judge Hartman continued, voice even and controlled. The medical evidence is not merely supportive. It is conclusive. She turned to the gallery. Without intervention, this child would not be alive. The room stayed utterly silent. Even the air seemed to pause. Slide after slide appeared. The library coordinator's written statement, the shelter roster confirming Eli's presence over multiple nights. The photograph of the alley community garden the bikers had built as part of their outreach, not one piece contradicted the others, not one thread frayed under scrutiny. Judge Hartman reviewed them all, with the patience of someone who understood exactly what it meant to set precedent, exactly what it meant to give a child a real chance. Marcus kept his hands folded tightly, but Eli could feel the tension radiating off him. Hope coiled with fear, both pulling in opposite directions. He looked like a man bracing for a verdict that could rebuild him or shatter him. Let's examine the proposed placement, the judge said finally. A different slide appeared. A scanned copy of the lease and affidavit from the landlord on 8th Street. Testimony confirming that the studio above the dry cleaners was clean, stable, and provided at no cost. Another document followed, a notarized letter from the principal of Jefferson Elementary, promising full support for Eli's educational needs, followed by a statement from the community center about his participation. Chain of custody stamps gleamed at the bottom of every page. The judge leaned back slightly. All documentation appears legitimate and internally consistent. Jennifer shifted again, this time unable to hide her discomfort. Your Honor, the child's placement with a motorcycle club is not the question. The judge cut in gently but firmly. The question is whether he will be safe, supported, and given the stability he has lacked for years. Her eyes moved to the man in the vest beside him. Shaw, she said slowly, you understand that guardianship is not symbolic. It is a legal and moral commitment. Marcus swallowed. I do. You understand it requires transparency, consistent follow-through, and a home environment free from foreseeable harm. Yes, Your Honor, and you are willing to be monitored. His reply came without hesitation. Every day, if needed. She studied him, really studied him, before turning to Eli. Young man. Eli's spine straightened. Do you want this man responsible for you? The question didn't frighten him anymore. Yes, he said, steady this time. I trust him. Something flickered in the judge's expression. A brief, quiet recognition. She lifted the final form from her folder, the guardianship order. The lines waiting for a signature looked stark and powerful in the fluorescent light. This court, she said, will now sign the temporary guardianship agreement. She took up her pen. The courtroom held its breath. Her signature swept across the page in one clean, unwavering motion. Temporary guardianship granted, she declared, effective immediately. The paper was stamped. The stamp echoed against wood. Soft, final, binding. Eli exhaled slowly, as though the air inside him had been trapped for years. Marcus bowed his head, relief carving across his shoulders. The bikers rose quietly, leather whispering like the shift of wings. Judge Hartman handed the signed document to the bailiff. Place it in the official record. Eli watched it travel to the clerk's desk, watched the date marked, the file sealed, the papers stacked neatly into the drawers of the system that once failed him but now, finally, recognized him. Not as a burden, not as a case number, as a child worth protecting, as a child with a home. Marcus touched his shoulder gently. Ready? Kid. For the first time, Eli didn't hesitate. He stood, pocketed the bookmark, straightened his vest, and walked out of the courtroom beside the man who had fought the law for him. And won. The heavy courthouse doors swung open, spilling Eli and Marcus into the afternoon sunlight. The air outside felt different, warmer, fuller, as if the day itself had been holding its breath. And finally exhaled, Eli blinked against the brightness. The courthouse behind him loomed with cold stone and tall windows that reflected nothing back but the sidewalk in front of him. The second he stepped onto it, he felt the shift. The leather vest on his shoulders no longer felt like borrowed courage. It felt like armor that finally belonged to him. Marcus rested a steady hand on his shoulder. Take a breath. Kid, he murmured. You did good in there. Eli inhaled slowly. The air smelled faintly of car exhaust, warm pavement, and something else, something he'd never truly recognized before. Safety. The sound reached them next, a low rumble. Soft at first, then building, layer by layer, engine by engine. Around the corner, one motorcycle appeared, then another, then more. 23 shining machines rolled to a stop at the curb, engines idling in quiet, respectful unison, no roaring, no showmanship, just presence, enough to fill the street with warmth instead of intimidation. One of the bikers lifted a small helmet, black, glossy, new, comically large for a 10-year-old. The man offered it with a grin. We figured you could use one. Eli touched it with both hands. The inside smelled like fresh padding and factory glue. It felt too big, too round, too adult. He looked up at Marcus, unsure. Marcus knelt to adjust the chin strap. Looks perfect to me, he said softly. The buckle clicked shut, a small, solid sound that anchored Eli to the moment. Marcus's own helmet came down over his head. He swung one leg over the bike and patted the seat behind him. Hop on. Eli climbed up carefully. The leather of Marcus's jacket felt warm beneath his hands as he held on, fingers curling into the seams. The bike shifted slightly under their combined weight, humming beneath him like a living creature. Marcus turned his head just enough for his voice to carry back. Hold tight and lean with me on turns. Eli nodded against the oversized helmet, which bobbed awkwardly over his ears. The engines quieted, waiting, like an orchestra raised bowstrings in silence. Marcus started the ride home with a gentle throttle. The rest of the formation fell in behind them, symmetrical and slow, giving Eli time to adjust to the movement. Wind brushed his cheek through the open visor. The world blurred gently at the edges, but the center, Marcus's back, warm and steady in front of him, remained clear. A strange warmth filled Eli's chest, not adrenaline, not fear, something softer, something that reached places inside him he'd forgotten were still alive. Halfway down Maple Street, Marcus's voice floated back, raw around the edges. I thought we were gonna lose you, he said quietly. I mean, really lose you. Eli's arms tightened around him without thinking, and when she said foster care, Marcus exhaled, breath shaking. I swear I felt sick. I can fight men, I can fight danger, but I can't fight the system alone. He paused. But you, kid, You didn't break. You stood your ground. The engines hummed behind them like a heartbeat. Eli buried his face against Marcus's back, hiding the burn in his eyes. No one had ever told him he'd stood strong. No one had ever looked at him and seen anything but a burden or a problem. No one had ever said they'd been scared of losing him. He didn't know how to respond. So he didn't. He just held on tighter. The street rolled beneath them. Houses, fences, telephone poles blending into the golden wash of late afternoon. Children playing on lawns paused to stare at the convoy of leather and chrome passing by, not with fear, but with awe. As they approached the apartment above the dry cleaners, the sun dipped low enough to cast long shadows across the storefront windows. The bikes idled to a stop in neat lines. Engines clicked softly as they cooled. Eli slid off the bike, wobbling slightly from the ride. The oversized helmet tilted forward over his eyes, making him blink and push it back with both hands. Marcus laughed under his breath, the sound gentle and unguarded. He lifted the helmet off and set it on his own bike's handlebar. "Needs a little adjusting," he said. "We'll get it to fit." Eli looked up at him. I liked it." Marcus' smile deepened. "Good." One by one, the bikers removed their helmets. Some nodded at Eli. Some gave small waves. None said anything that would overwhelm him. They didn't need to. Their presence spoke for them. Eli felt something settle in his ribs. A quiet, warm certainty. He wasn't a ghost anymore. Marcus nudged him with an elbow. "You ready to head up?" Eli nodded. As they climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment, the leather vest shifted softly around Eli's shoulders. It didn't feel too big now, or too heavy, or like something he needed to earn. It felt like it fit. Marcus unlocked the door and ushered him inside. The room looked exactly as it had before. Small, simple, imperfect, but it radiated something new. Belonging, continuity, a beginning. Marcus set the court papers on the counter. They made a soft tap against the surface. Nothing grand, nothing dramatic, just real. "You're home, kid," he said. Eli stood in the center of the room, fingers curled around the bookmark in his pocket. For the first time in his life, the word home didn't feel fragile. It felt possible. And that was enough. By early autumn, Maple Street had changed. The heat softened. The air smelled faintly of turning leaves and warm soil. And the alley between 5th and 6th, once a forgotten strip of cracked pavement, had become something else entirely. A garden. Raised wooden beds lined the narrow passage, filled with tomato vines, herbs, and marigolds planted to keep pests away. The soil was rich, dark, and alive. Painted stones marked each section, small handprints from neighborhood kids baked into the colors. At the entrance, a simple sign hung from chain links. "Take what you need. Give what you can." Eli stood beside the tallest planter, dirt beneath his fingernails, sun warming the back of his neck. The leather vest hugged his shoulders comfortably now, molded to him like it had always been his. The laughter of children drifted from the street. Someone rode past on a bike. Another neighbor watered her flowers. It all felt easy, steady, safe. A breeze carried the faint sound of engines in the distance. Not loud, not overwhelming, just a reminder that he wasn't alone. "Class is starting," Chun called from the shelter doorway. Eli wiped his hands on his jeans and walked across the lot. The mismatched sneakers on his feet, blue and gray, both second-hand, thudded softly on the asphalt. He still wore them by choice. They were the last relic of the boy he used to be, and he carried them with pride now. Inside the shelter, 15 people sat in folding chairs, tired eyes, rough hands, clothes that had lived more lives than they had. They looked exactly how Eli once felt, invisible. He stepped to the front of the room as Ms. Chun adjusted the CPR dummy on the table. She gave him a proud, watery smile. He nodded back, still not used to being looked at that way. "This is Eli," she said to the room. "He'll be leading today's training." Eli's heart kicked once, but he steadied himself. He wasn't that scared kid from the alley anymore. He began softly. The room leaned in. "My name is Eli," he continued, voice growing steadier. "And a while ago, learning this saved someone's life." Faces lifted, eyes focused. A shift passed through the room. "Quiet, hopeful. You don't have to be strong," he said. "You don't have to be grown up. You just have to try." He placed his hands on the dummy's chest, fingers interlaced in the way he'd practiced 100 times, and pressed. "This is how you give a second chance." He guided them through breaths, compressions, head tilt, chest rise, encouraged trembling hand, quieted doubts, reminded them that mistakes were better than doing nothing. By the end of the hour, the room felt different, lighter, like a window had cracked open for everyone inside. Chun squeezed his shoulder afterward, her voice a whisper. "Your mother would be proud." Eli nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The bookmark in his pocket warmed against his leg. The afternoon sun spilled through the shelter windows. Dust danced in the glow. The world waited outside. Later that week, Eli stood beside Marcus at a small podium in City Hall. The chamber was filled. Officials, community leaders, reporters, and residents who'd followed the story through every step. A banner hung behind the podium. "Eli's Law. CPR training for all public shelters." Passed unanimously. The applause felt too big, too loud. Eli shifted nervously, and Marcus placed a steady hand on his back. "You earned this," Marcus murmured. Eli faced the crowd. His voice wavered once, then steadied. "Thank you for making sure the next kid who needs help gets it." The mayor shook his hand. Cameras flashed. Bikers in the back row nodded silently, their vests gleaming like polished shields. Eli didn't feel small. He didn't feel invisible. He felt real. That Saturday, the sun dipped warm and low over Maple Street. As Eli headed to the garden, the soil smelled rich and damp from morning watering. The marigolds tilted in the breeze like tiny suns. Emma sat on the curb, coloring a new picture. When she saw him, she ran over and threw her arms around him. "Daddy says you're famous," she said proudly. Eli laughed. "Not really." She insisted. "You have a law named after you." He shrugged. Fame wasn't what mattered. The garden mattered. The shelter mattered. Marcus mattered. Emma mattered. Home mattered. A soft rumble grew in the distance. One engine, then another, then a few more. Not 23 this time. Just enough to remind him he had a family that rode on chrome and leather and loyalty the world didn't always understand. 3 bikers pulled up beside the alley. Marcus stepped off his bike and walked over. "You ready?" he asked. "For what?" Eli asked, brow raised. Marcus tapped the edge of the vest gently. "Brotherhood meeting. You're coming." Eli's eyes widened. "Yeah, you." Marcus grinned. "You earned your seat." Eli looked down at his second-hand shoes. Patched, faded, mismatched. Once a symbol of being unwanted, now a symbol of everywhere he'd walked to get here. He nodded, trying and failing to hide the grin spreading across his face. Marcus handed him the slightly too big helmet. "Hop on, kid." Eli swung onto the bike behind him, leather vest warm against the fading sunlight. Emma waved. Chin stepped out of her shop to watch. Neighbors paused mid-step. The bike roared to life, loud, proud, alive. As they pulled away from the curb, the last beam of sunlight hit Eli's shoes, making the scuffed rubber gleam like polished steel. Sometimes, he thought, angels didn't have wings. Sometimes, they rode motorcycles. Sometimes, They wore second-hand shoes, and for the first time, Eli believed he was one of them. At its heart, this story reminds us that the world often overlooks the very people who carry the most resilience. Eli's journey shows that strength doesn't always look loud or polished. Sometimes it comes in second-hand shoes, quiet courage, and the stubborn belief that a single act of kindness can change the direction of a life. His path, and Marcus's too, asks us to rethink what family means, what responsibility looks like, and how easily society can confuse appearance with truth. It reminds us that systems, even with good intentions, can fail those who fall outside the neat lines. But people rarely do. If we choose to step forward instead of turning away. And maybe the deepest message here is this: silence can be a kind of prison, one built from fear, shame, or old wounds. Breaking that silence by asking for help, by speaking up for someone else, by refusing to accept the roles others assign us, is often the first step toward healing. In the end, justice and dignity aren't abstract ideas. They're built from small, steady choices to see the humanity in someone others might dismiss. As Americans like to say, the long road shows the true horse, and this long road shows the quiet, enduring power of compassion. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your reflections in the comments. Have you ever witnessed or lived something that changed your understanding of courage or family? Share your thoughts below. Hit like to support the channel, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story filled with heart, conflict, and hope. Wishing you peace tonight, and the gentle reminder that even after the chaos, there's always room for a new beginning.